In bustling Chicago, two unlikely strangers, Chloe, struggling to rebuild her life, and Ethan, a successful man questioning his path, form a friendship that changes everything. Chloe dreams of opening a cafe, a safe haven for the community, while Ethan feels drawn to leave his corporate life to make a real difference. Their bond becomes a source of courage as each faces life-changing decisions. Will they find true fulfillment, or will their journeys pull them apart? If you're drawn to stories of resilience and self-discovery, subscribe and leave a comment with your thoughts. Let's dive into Chloe and Ethan's journey together. The chill in the November air felt sharper than usual as Chloe Michaels walked along the crowded streets of Chicago. She pulled her thin, faded cardigan tighter around herself, feeling the familiar bite of the wind seep through every loose stitch. The city was alive with the usual rush-hour bustle. Cars honking, pedestrians darting across streets, the cacophony of a world that seemed oblivious to her struggles. She kept her head down, her gaze focused on the concrete beneath her worn sneakers, each step heavy with the weight of a life that had unraveled far too quickly. At 27, Chloe hadn't imagined she would end up here. She'd once had a plan, a modest but promising job in publishing, a cramped yet cozy apartment, and a future that had felt hopeful. But life, as she'd learned too well, rarely went according to plan. Her mother's illness had crept in like an uninvited guest, draining every penny she'd saved. Even after her mother's passing, the debts and the responsibilities had continued to shadow her. Now, she was left with almost nothing, a worn-out bag, a handful of belongings, and a fragile sense of purpose that she clung to desperately. As she passed a cafe, Chloe caught a glimpse of the warm, inviting glow inside. The place was packed with people holding steaming mugs, laughing with friends, engrossed in their laptops, their lives moving forward without the burden of survival weighing them down. She hesitated outside, her gaze lingering on a bench under the cafe's awning, dry and shielded from the early evening drizzle that had started to fall. Taking a seat, Chloe drew her knees close, wrapping her arms around herself as she watched the world inside the cafe unfold through the glass. She could almost remember the taste of a warm latte, the kind she used to order on Friday afternoons, her own small indulgence after a week of work. But those days felt like a distant memory, one she didn't dare dwell on for too long. For now, she had to focus on the essentials, finding a job, scraping together enough for her next meal, and maybe, just maybe, securing a place to stay that offered a modicum of security. She forced herself to breathe, whispering under her breath, "Tomorrow will be better." It was a fragile hope, but it was all she had. Ethan Brooks straightened his tie in the mirrored window of his office, taking a last glance at his reflection before heading out for the night. At 32, Ethan had meticulously built a life that others envied. A senior position at a prestigious firm, a well-appointed apartment overlooking the city, and a life filled with elegant parties, professional accolades, and the right circles of friends. He'd crafted his world with precision, each step a deliberate move toward success, each decision adding another layer to the life he'd imagined for himself. But recently, something felt different. A faint but persistent restlessness gnawed at him, a feeling he couldn't quite explain. It was as if he were living someone else's life, following a script that he'd once written but now read with a strange sense of detachment. His fiancée, Lily Harper, was as perfect a match as he could have hoped for, driven, successful, and impeccably composed. She shared his ambition, and together, they were a picture of everything he'd once believed he wanted. Yet, there were moments, quiet, fleeting moments, when he wondered if ambition alone was enough. As he left his office, Ethan checked his watch, calculating he had enough time to grab a coffee before his evening meeting. The thought of a quiet moment, a few minutes away from the rigid expectations of his world, felt like a luxury. The cafe down the street had become a sort of refuge for him lately. It was a small, cozy place, far from the sleek, modern venues he frequented with his colleagues. Here, the lights were warm, the tables a bit worn, and the atmosphere free of pretense. He felt a strange comfort in the simplicity of it, a reminder, perhaps, of a part of himself he'd long since buried. Chloe was lost in thought, her gaze fixed on a group of friends seated by the cafe window, when she sensed movement beside her. A tall figure brushed past, his dark coat flapping slightly as he paused, looking down at her with a faint, almost surprised smile. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gentle but firm, a tone that suggested he was used to getting people's attention. Chloe blinked, instinctively pulling back, her heart skipping as she met his gaze. He looked to be in his early 30s, clean-cut with an air of quiet confidence that seemed out of place next to her worn clothes and guarded posture. "It's fine," she murmured, lowering her gaze, hoping he'd move on. But he lingered for a moment longer, a flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps, in his expression. "Actually," he began slowly, his tone softening, "I was about to go inside for a coffee. Would you like to join me?" Chloe's initial instinct was to refuse, to insist she was fine, to brush off his offer as she had done with countless others. She was used to navigating the world alone, relying on no one but herself. But as the wind picked up, the promise of warmth and a hot drink was impossible to ignore. She hadn't felt true warmth in days, and for once, the idea of accepting kindness without questioning it seemed oddly appealing. After a hesitant pause, she nodded. "Sure, I'd appreciate that." They walked into the cafe together, the warmth enveloping them as the door closed behind. Ethan ordered 2 coffees, guiding her to a small table near the window. As Chloe took a seat, she felt an odd mix of gratitude and discomfort, her hands instinctively wrapping around the warm cup as if to steady herself. He introduced himself as Ethan, his demeanor polite but relaxed. She shared her name quietly, her voice soft as she glanced around, trying to ignore the nagging voice that reminded her how out of place she felt here. Still, there was a quiet reassurance in Ethan's presence, a kind of steadiness that eased her nerves. "Are you from Chicago, Chloe?" he asked, his tone casual as he took a sip of his coffee, his gaze attentive. She nodded, trying to keep her answer light. "I've been here all my life, though things are a little different now." Ethan caught the subtle tension in her voice, sensing that her story was more complicated than she let on. He chose not to press her, respecting the boundaries she seemed to hold close. Instead, he offered a small, understanding smile. "Chicago's a strange place sometimes, isn't it? One minute, it feels like the world is moving too fast, and the next it's like you're invisible in the crowd." Chloe's eyes softened, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "Yeah," she replied quietly. "Sometimes it's just a place." They sat in a comfortable silence, watching the world through the window, 2 strangers sharing a moment of quiet amidst the noise of the city. For Chloe, the warmth of the cafe, the kindness of a stranger, and the simple comfort of a hot drink felt like a rare reprieve, a small but meaningful break from the struggles that shadowed her. Ethan didn't expect to find himself thinking about Chloe after they parted ways, yet her presence lingered in his mind. Something about her, a quiet resilience he hadn't seen in his world of ambition and polish, had struck him. It was as though she carried a strength that had been earned, not given, a strength that reminded him of the parts of himself he'd kept hidden, the parts that had once longed for something simpler and more honest. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself returning to the cafe, scanning the tables and glancing at the bench outside, hoping to see her again. He told himself it was mere curiosity, that he simply wanted to understand what had driven her to that point, why her presence had left such an impression. But a part of him knew there was more, a quiet longing to reconnect with the sense of purpose he had lost, a purpose he sensed in Chloe, despite her hardships. When he finally saw her again, seated at the same bench, he felt an odd mixture of relief and anticipation. This time, he approached with a familiar ease, feeling less like a stranger and more like someone who belonged in that small, unremarkable corner of the city. "Back again?" she asked with a faint smile, a hint of humor softening her guarded expression. "Couldn't stay away," he replied, sitting beside her, his gaze thoughtful. They talked about small things, the weather, the quirks of the city, the people who passed by, all the while growing more at ease in each other's presence. And in those quiet moments, each found something they hadn't realized they were searching for, a connection that felt genuine, a reminder of the strength that lay within them both. Ethan and Chloe sat at the corner table in the cafe, a sense of unhurried calm settling over them. Outside, the evening draped the city in a muted glow, the bustling sounds of Chicago softened by the thick cafe windows. For the first time in what felt like ages, Chloe felt present, her worries dulled, and her thoughts less tangled. She cradled the coffee cup in her hands, savoring the warmth as much as the brief escape from her usual reality. "So, Chloe," Ethan began, his tone relaxed as he leaned forward slightly. "What's your story?" Chloe hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. It was a question she'd come to dread, one that forced her to confront the pieces of her life she often tried to ignore. But something about Ethan's demeanor, his quiet curiosity, the way he seemed to genuinely listen, put her at ease. "I used to work in publishing," she said finally, her voice low but steady. "Nothing big, just editing, proofreading, helping authors put their stories together. I loved it, actually." She paused, the warmth of that memory flickering in her eyes. But things changed. Ethan sensed the weight in her words, an invisible layer of pain that told him there was more to her story. He wanted to ask, to understand, but he held back, allowing her the space to share at her own pace. "Life just has a way of pulling the rug out from under you," she added with a faint, almost wistful smile. "One moment, everything's moving forward, and the next, you're scrambling just to stay on your feet." He nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Yeah, I think everyone goes through that at some point. Sometimes, the things we think are certain end up being anything, but..." Chloe looked at him, surprised by the note of vulnerability in his voice. He seemed like someone who had everything together, a career, stability, a world far removed from her own struggles. Yet, there was an honesty in his words, an empathy that she hadn't expected. "What about you?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Your life seems pretty solid." Ethan let out a quiet chuckle, leaning back in his chair. "I guess it does look that way. But lately, I've been wondering if I've been climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall." Her brows knit slightly, intrigued. "What do you mean?" He took a sip of his coffee, pausing as he gathered his thoughts. "I've always followed this path I thought I wanted. Good job, successful fiancé, a nice apartment. The whole thing." He glanced out the window, his gaze distant. "But lately, it feels like I'm living someone else's dream. It's hard to explain, but something feels missing." Chloe nodded, understanding his sentiment better than he realized. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "we chase things that we think will make us happy, only to find out they don't." Their eyes met, a shared understanding passing between them. For a moment, the noise of the cafe faded, leaving only the quiet exchange of two people who, though strangers, felt connected by an unspoken truth. Chloe felt her guard lowering, the invisible walls she kept around herself easing slightly. That night, as Chloe made her way back to the shelter, she found herself replaying her conversation with Ethan. His words had lingered, stirring something deep within her. It had been so long since she'd felt seen, understood, not as a person marked by her struggles, but as someone capable, someone who still held a spark of hope. She walked slowly, her fingers brushing against the fabric of her mother's old scarf. Her mother had been her constant supporter, her guide through every high and low. The memory of her mother's encouragement lingered in her mind, a reminder of her strength, a silent whisper telling her she was capable of starting over. Ethan's kindness had been unexpected, and in his presence, she had felt herself relax, her worries quieted if only for a while. She felt a mix of gratitude and apprehension, knowing how fleeting moments of comfort could be. But she held on to the feeling, a reminder that there were still people in the world who cared, who took the time to understand. In his own apartment, Ethan sat in his living room, the city lights casting a soft glow across the polished surfaces. He felt an uncharacteristic sense of calm, as though the quiet conversation with Chloe had stripped away some of the complexities of his world. She'd spoken with a rawness, a vulnerability that he rarely encountered in his usual circles. In her, he saw a strength born of resilience, a reminder that life was about more than just achievements and polished facades. He glanced at his phone, where messages from his fiancée, Lily, waited. Their conversations had become more about schedules, events, and shared goals than anything deeply personal. Lily was everything he'd once thought he wanted. Yet their relationship felt scripted, a series of steps taken toward an ideal life that no longer felt entirely his. Ethan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. In his mind, he saw Chloe's quiet expression, the way her eyes softened as she'd shared her story, and he felt an urge to understand more, to know what had brought her to that bench outside the cafe, to see beyond the carefully guarded surface. The following week, Ethan found himself back at the cafe, almost as if drawn there by a force he couldn't quite explain. He scanned the room as he entered, feeling a quiet sense of disappointment when he didn't see her. But as he stepped back outside, he noticed Chloe sitting on the same bench, her eyes focused on the ground, her expression distant. "Chloe," he greeted, a gentle warmth in his voice. She looked up, surprised to see him. A smile flickered across her face, a hint of relief breaking through her otherwise guarded demeanor. "Ethan, back again?" He shrugged, leaning against the bench with a casualness he rarely allowed himself. "Guess I couldn't stay away. Mind if you sit?" She nodded, scooting over slightly to make room. They fell into a comfortable silence, the sounds of the city around them forming a backdrop as they each gathered their thoughts. "I was thinking about what you said the other day," Ethan began, his gaze steady. "About chasing things that don't make us happy. I've been doing that for a long time, I think. It's like I've been ticking off boxes without ever really asking myself why." Chloe looked at him, sensing a vulnerability that mirrored her own. "I think a lot of people do that," she replied softly. "We're told what we're supposed to want, and sometimes we don't realize it's not right until we're too far in to turn back." Her words resonated with him, her quiet insight echoing thoughts he'd long ignored. He felt a growing admiration for her, a respect that went beyond their differences, rooted in her ability to see through the illusions of success and recognize what truly mattered. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd made different choices," he said almost to himself. "If I'd followed a path that felt real, instead of one that just looked right." Chloe gave him a small, understanding smile. "Maybe it's not too late to make those choices." They shared a quiet look, a moment of shared understanding that spoke volumes. For Chloe, Ethan's words were a reminder that even those who seemed to have it all could feel lost, could crave something deeper than surface-level success. And for Ethan, Chloe's resilience was a mirror, reflecting back the strength he knew he needed to find within himself. In the days following her second meeting with Ethan, Chloe felt a shift within herself, a subtle but unmistakable surge of hope. She had recently secured an interview for a part-time job at a local cafe, a modest position but one that offered a small step toward stability. The prospect of work, of earning her own way again, filled her with a quiet resolve, a reminder that she was capable of rebuilding, no matter how daunting the road ahead. The day of the interview, she dressed carefully, smoothing out the wrinkles in her only presentable blouse and brushing her hair back. She took a deep breath before stepping inside, determined to present herself with confidence, even if her nerves threatened to overtake her. The cafe manager, a middle-aged woman named Margie, welcomed her with a warm smile. Chloe sensed Margie's kindness, a sincerity that helped ease her initial nerves. They talked about the role, Chloe's experience in customer service, and her willingness to work flexible hours. By the end of the interview, Chloe felt cautiously optimistic, a small flame of hope igniting within her. "I think you'd be a great fit here, Chloe," Margie said, offering her a smile. "I'll give you a call by the end of the week, but I have a good feeling about this." Chloe thanked her, feeling a rush of gratitude as she left the cafe. The prospect of a steady job, a step toward independence, filled her with a sense of accomplishment that had long eluded her. She clung to that feeling as she walked home, reminding herself that she was capable of more than mere survival. As Ethan continued to see Chloe, he felt his perspective on his own life shifting. His relationship with Lily, once a source of pride, now felt strained, weighed down by unspoken doubts and unmet expectations. Lily sensed the changes in him, her intuition picking up on his distracted demeanor and occasional absences. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Lily looked at him with a searching expression. "Ethan, is everything okay? You seem distant lately." He glanced at her, the familiar feeling of guilt tightening in his chest. "I don't know," he admitted, choosing honesty over pretense. "I guess I've been thinking a lot about where my life is headed, trying to figure out what I really want." Lily's face softened, but her expression held a trace of frustration. "We've spent years building this life together, Ethan. I thought we wanted the same things." He nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "We did, but maybe I need some time to figure out if those things are still right for me." Their conversation ended in a quiet tension, a mutual understanding that their relationship was changing in ways they hadn't anticipated. As he lay awake that night, Ethan felt the pull of his old life clashing with the new awareness Chloe had stirred within him. He knew he was standing at a crossroads, and the choice he made would define the life he built moving forward. The phone call from Margie offering Chloe the part-time position at the cafe came a few days after her interview, and she could hardly believe it. She replayed the words in her head as she made her way to her first shift, the mixture of disbelief and cautious hope thrumming within her. It felt surreal. Finally, a step toward stability, a small but significant victory in her fight to rebuild her life. The cafe was already bustling when she arrived, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air as customers chatted and worked on laptops. Margie greeted her with a welcoming smile, showing her around the cafe and explaining her duties. Chloe was careful to listen, her focus intent as she absorbed each detail. Every instruction, every task felt like an opportunity, and she moved with a quiet determination, wanting to prove herself. As the hours went by, she found herself slipping into a rhythm. She took orders, wiped down tables, and learned the art of balancing trays without spilling a drop. It was hard work, but as she moved behind the counter, she felt a sense of purpose that she hadn't known in months. Each customer she served, each task she completed strengthened the flicker of confidence she'd begun to rediscover. At the end of her shift, Margie approached her, her expression kind. "You did great today, Chloe. I knew you'd be a natural." Chloe felt a rush of pride, a warmth that spread through her chest. "Thank you, Margie. I'm grateful for the chance." Margie nodded, her smile encouraging. "I've been in your shoes before. Just remember, you're stronger than you think." Those words stayed with Chloe as she walked home that evening, the reality of her new job sinking in. She was moving forward one step at a time, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the possibility of a future she could shape for herself. In the days following Chloe's first shift, Ethan found himself thinking about her more often. Their conversations had stirred something within him, a curiosity he couldn't quite explain. Her resilience, her quiet strength. It was unlike anything he'd seen in the polished, calculated world he inhabited. For the first time in years, he felt drawn to someone not because of what they had achieved, but because of the person they were beneath the surface. One evening, as he wrapped up another long day at the office, he decided to visit the cafe where she'd mentioned working. He hadn't planned on going, but the pull to see her again, to understand her story a little better, was too strong to ignore. When he entered the cafe, the comforting aroma of coffee and the low hum of conversation greeted him. He scanned the room and quickly spotted her behind the counter, focused as she prepared a latte for a customer. There was a slight smile on her face, a natural warmth in the way she moved, as though she belonged in that space. Chloe looked up, her eyes widening slightly as she recognized him. "Ethan, I didn't expect to see you here," she said, a hint of surprise in her voice. He smiled, leaning against the counter. "I thought I'd stop by, see how things were going." She poured the last of the steamed milk into the cup and handed it to the waiting customer, her smile growing. "It's good. Better than I expected, actually." "That's great to hear," he replied, genuinely pleased. "You seem like you're in your element." They shared a quiet moment, a comfortable silence settling between them. For Ethan, seeing Chloe here, in a place she was beginning to call her own, was a reminder of the strength he admired in her. A strength that had been tested and refined by hardship. "Do you have a break soon?" he asked, hopeful but not wanting to intrude. She glanced at the clock, then nodded. 10 minutes. Let me just finish up here. Ethan waited, finding a table near the back, away from the main flow of customers. A few minutes later, Chloe joined him, wiping her hands on her apron as she settled into the chair across from him. "Thanks for stopping by," she said, her voice soft but genuine. "I know it's just a cafe job, but it means a lot to me. It's not just a job, Chloe. It's a step towards something bigger. You're building a life again. That's something to be proud of." Chloe looked down, a faint blush coloring her cheeks, but there was a warmth in her gaze, a gratitude she didn't quite know how to put into words. As the weeks passed, Chloe's life continued to settle into a steady rhythm, each shift at the cafe bringing her closer to a sense of stability she hadn't known in ages. Her small income allowed her to set aside a little each week, a quiet triumph that reminded her of the progress she was making. One Friday evening, after her shift, she found herself thinking about Ethan, their conversations, and the unspoken connection that seemed to be growing between them. He had been a source of comfort, a reminder of the kindness that still existed in the world, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for his presence in her life. On impulse, she pulled out her phone and sent him a message. "Chloe, hey, I'm finishing up at the cafe. Are you around? Thought we could grab a coffee somewhere else for once." She hesitated for a moment after hitting send, wondering if he'd feel obligated or if she was overstepping. But the response came quickly, easing her doubts. "Ethan, I'd love that. There's a place near the lake that's pretty quiet. Meet you there?" Chloe smiled, pocketing her phone and feeling a warmth that went beyond the excitement of a casual invitation. She hadn't reached out to anyone in a long time, hadn't allowed herself to seek comfort in someone else's presence. But with Ethan, it felt safe, effortless even. They met at a small coffee shop by the lake, its warm interior contrasting with the cool, autumn air outside. Ethan was waiting for her when she arrived, his smile easy, his presence calming in a way that made her feel instantly at ease. "Hey," she greeted, her voice soft but genuine. "Hey," he replied, holding the door open as they stepped inside. They ordered their drinks, Chloe opting for a simple coffee while Ethan chose a latte, and took their cups to go, deciding to walk along the lakefront instead. The path was quiet, with only the soft sound of the water lapping against the shore breaking the silence. They walked side by side, sipping their drinks, each lost in thought but comforted by the other's presence. After a while, Ethan glanced over at her, his expression thoughtful. I don't think I've ever met someone who's been through as much as you have and still holds on to so much kindness." Chloe looked down, a shy smile touching her lips. "I don't know if it's kindness," she replied softly. "Maybe it's just survival. You learn to keep moving forward, even if you don't always know where you're headed." He nodded, his gaze steady. "I think that's what I admire about you. You're not just surviving. You're creating something new, something meaningful. That takes strength." They fell into a comfortable silence, the quiet honesty of his words resonating deeply within her. She realized that his presence in her life had become more than just a friendship. He was someone who saw her for who she was, who respected her journey without judgment or pity. And that was a rarity she cherished. As they continued walking, Chloe felt an unfamiliar but welcome sense of contentment. The city lights reflected off the lake, casting a soft glow that seemed to mirror the quiet hope growing within her. Their friendship continued to deepen, each conversation drawing them closer as they shared pieces of themselves they hadn't revealed to anyone else. For Ethan, these moments with Chloe were unlike anything he'd experienced before, an escape from the rigid expectations of his life, a reminder that authenticity could coexist with vulnerability. One evening, as they met for coffee again, Ethan found himself opening up in a way he hadn't anticipated. They were seated at a table in the corner, the cafe warm and dimly lit, with the soft murmur of other customers providing a quiet backdrop to their conversation. "Chloe, I have to tell you something," he began, his voice hesitant but steady. "Meeting you, it's made me question everything. I've spent so much of my life trying to fit into this mold, to follow a path I thought I was supposed to want. But now, I'm not so sure." Chloe looked at him, her eyes gentle, encouraging. "I think it's good to question things," she said softly. "Sometimes the hardest part is letting go of the life we thought we wanted. He took a deep breath, the weight of his words settling between them. I don't think I would have realized that if it weren't for you. You've helped me see that there's more to life than just status and expectations. They sat in silence, the unspoken bond between them growing stronger with each shared truth. For Chloe, Ethan's words were a reminder of the impact she could have, even in the midst of her own struggles. And for Ethan, Chloe was a beacon of resilience, a reminder that life's true meaning lay in the connections we formed and the courage to be honest with ourselves. As their friendship continued to blossom, both Chloe and Ethan felt the weight of the choices they were facing. Chloe's job at the cafe had provided her with a sense of purpose, a small foothold in a world that had once felt overwhelming. She began to dream of something bigger, a future where she could create a life rooted in stability and peace. Ethan, meanwhile, felt the growing tension between his old life and the path Chloe had inspired him to explore. His relationship with Lily, once the cornerstone of his future, now felt like an obligation, a partnership built on expectations rather than genuine connection. He knew he had to decide, to choose between the life he'd planned and the life he truly wanted. One evening, after another long walk together, Chloe looked up at him, sensing his inner turmoil. "Ethan," she said quietly, "whatever you decide, I just want you to know you deserve to be happy. Don't settle for a life that doesn't feel right." Her words struck a chord within him, her encouragement giving him the strength he needed to confront his own fears. He knew that whatever came next, he had to honor the person he was becoming, the person he discovered through Chloe's friendship. As they said their goodbyes that night, both sensed that their lives were on the brink of change, a new chapter waiting to unfold. And though they didn't know where their journeys would lead, they felt a quiet certainty in each other's presence, a bond that would guide them through whatever lay ahead. One chilly evening, Chloe found herself standing outside the cafe, watching as the last light of day faded into a soft, dusky twilight. She was just wrapping up her shift when she heard someone call her name. Turning, she saw Ethan, his hands shoved into the pockets of his coat, a familiar, warm smile on his face. "Hey, Chloe," he said, his breath misting in the cold air. "I was wondering, are you free for dinner?" She hesitated, a mix of surprise and excitement fluttering in her chest. It had been a long time since anyone had invited her to dinner, a simple gesture that held a deeper significance. She nodded, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Yeah, I'd like that." They walked down the street to a small, unassuming diner Chloe had mentioned once during one of their walks. It was the kind of place she liked, cozy, modest, with a menu that didn't strain her limited budget. Ethan seemed at ease, asking her about her shift, her plans for the week, filling the space with an effortless conversation that made her feel more comfortable with each passing moment. As they waited for their food, Chloe found herself studying him, noticing the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way he seemed lost in thought even as he listened intently to her. She sensed a quiet struggle beneath his calm demeanor, a weight he carried but hadn't yet shared. "Ethan," she said softly, choosing her words carefully, "you've been there for me more than I can say. I just want you to know I'm here for you too." He looked up, meeting her gaze, a faint surprise in his expression. "Thank you, Chloe," he replied, his voice sincere. "I've been questioning a lot of things lately, and meeting you has only made me more aware of what's missing." "What do you think is missing?" she asked, her tone gentle. He hesitated, the depth of his thoughts flickering in his eyes. "A sense of purpose. I've spent so much of my life chasing what I thought I wanted, but now I'm not so sure it's what I need." They fell into a comfortable silence, their unspoken understanding deepening. Chloe realized that Ethan's world, so polished on the surface, held its own shadows, his own struggles. And for Ethan, Chloe's quiet strength reminded him of a truth he'd long buried, that success meant little without authenticity, that happiness couldn't be scripted or manufactured. Over the next few weeks, Chloe continued to find her footing. Her job at the cafe gave her a small but steady income, and she saved carefully, each paycheck a step toward a future she was beginning to believe in. She'd even found a small room to rent, a modest space in a shared apartment that offered a sense of stability she hadn't known since her mother's passing. The first night in her new room, Chloe sat on the edge of the bed, taking in the bare walls, the simple furniture. It wasn't much, but it was hers, a small slice of independence that filled her with a quiet pride. She took out her notebook, the same one she'd used to jot down sketches and ideas during her publishing days, and began writing. The words came slowly at first, memories of her former life blending with new thoughts, new dreams. She wrote about the cafe, her hopes of one day owning a small place of her own, a space where people felt welcome, seen, understood. The vision was faint, but it was there, a dream that gave her something to look forward to, a purpose that felt uniquely hers. As she wrote, her thoughts drifted to Ethan. His kindness, his unwavering support, had been a lifeline, a reminder that she wasn't alone. She wondered if he knew the impact he'd had on her life, the quiet courage he'd helped her find. Ethan, meanwhile, was grappling with a sense of restlessness he couldn't shake. His routine had become stifling, the once comfortable rhythms of his life, now feeling like a script he no longer wanted to follow. His relationship with Lily, once a partnership he'd taken pride in, had become strained. She noticed his distraction, his late evenings, the way he seemed lost in his own thoughts even when they were together. One evening, as they prepared dinner in their sleek, modern kitchen, Lily turned to him, her gaze steady. "Ethan, is everything okay? You seem different lately." He paused, the question he'd been avoiding now unavoidable. "I don't know, Lily. I guess I'm just trying to figure things out." "Figure what out?" she asked, her tone a mixture of curiosity and concern. Ethan looked away, struggling to find the right words. He didn't want to hurt her, didn't want to admit that his heart was pulling him in a direction that might lead them apart. But he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. "I've been thinking a lot about my life, about whether I'm really on the path I'm meant to be on." Lily's expression softened, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "You're not happy, are you?" He met her gaze, the weight of her words settling heavily between them. "I don't think I am. And I'm sorry, Lily. I know this isn't what you deserve." They finished dinner in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Ethan knew he had to make a choice. To stay on a path that looked perfect but felt empty, or to pursue a life that resonated with the person he was becoming. The following weekend, Ethan and Chloe met at their usual spot by the lake. The cool breeze rustled the leaves, and the city skyline stretched across the horizon, a backdrop to the quiet bond they'd built. They walked side by side, their footsteps in sync, each taking comfort in the other's presence. As they reached a quiet spot, Chloe turned to him, her gaze thoughtful. "Ethan, I've been wanting to thank you. I don't think I would have had the courage to start over if it weren't for you." He looked at her, a warmth filling his chest. "Chloe, you've been just as much of an inspiration to me. You showed me that there's more to life than just the surface." They continued walking, the weight of their words settling between them. For Chloe, sharing her story with Ethan felt natural, her usual reluctance to open up softened by his gentle understanding. And for Ethan, Chloe's honesty was a reminder of the life he wanted to live, one rooted in authenticity, stripped of pretense. "I've been working on something," Chloe admitted, a hint of shyness in her voice. "It's just an idea, really, but I'm thinking of one day opening my own cafe. A place where people can feel like they belong, like they're part of something." Ethan's eyes lit up, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "Chloe, that's incredible. You should absolutely go for it." Her smile widened, the encouragement filling her with a sense of possibility. She hadn't allowed herself to dream in so long, but in Ethan's presence, her fears felt smaller, her ambitions within reach. For Ethan, the idea of Chloe creating something so personal, so genuine, stirred a longing within him, a desire to pursue his own path, to build a life that felt meaningful. And as they shared their dreams, both sensed that their friendship had become something more, a quiet, unspoken support that gave them the courage to face their own journeys. Later that evening, Ethan returned to his apartment, his mind buzzing with the possibilities Chloe's words had inspired. He paced his living room, the polished floors and designer furniture feeling foreign, as though they belonged to someone else. His life, once so carefully curated, now felt stifling, weighed down by expectations he no longer wished to fulfill. He took out his phone and scrolled through his messages, stopping at the ones from Lily. They were short, polite exchanges, reminders of the growing distance between them. Their relationship, once built on shared ambitions, had lost its spark, replaced by an unspoken tension neither of them could ignore. Ethan knew he had to face the truth. He was standing at a crossroad, and the path he chose would shape the rest of his life. For the first time, he felt the courage to choose a life that felt real, a life inspired by the honesty he'd found in Chloe's friendship. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating, a reminder that sometimes letting go of what we know is the only way to discover what we truly want. As Chloe continued to save from her job at the cafe, her dream of owning her own space felt less like a distant fantasy and more like a possibility. She shared her progress with Ethan during one of their evening walks, her excitement growing as she described her vision: a cozy place with warm lighting, a corner filled with books, a space where people felt they could linger, belong. "That sounds amazing, Chloe," Ethan said, his admiration clear. "You have a way of creating spaces that feel welcoming. I have no doubt you'll make it happen." His words filled her with a confidence she hadn't known in years, a quiet reassurance that reminded her of her mother's encouragement. She realized that her journey, though difficult, had brought her to a place of strength, a place where she could rebuild, dream, and believe in herself again. To celebrate her progress, Chloe decided to treat herself to a small indulgence: a new journal, a place to capture her thoughts, her dreams, her hopes for the future. She brought it to their next meeting, showing it to Ethan with a shy smile. "This is for my cafe plans," she explained, her voice filled with excitement. "I figured if I'm going to make it happen, I should start somewhere." Ethan took the journal, flipping through its blank pages, his smile warm. "Here's to filling these pages with everything you want, Chloe. You deserve it." They toasted with their coffee cups, a simple but meaningful gesture, each finding strength in the other's belief. And as they sat together, sharing dreams over steaming cups of coffee, they both sensed that their lives were moving forward, shaped by the courage and kindness they discovered in each other. The morning after his latest conversation with Chloe, Ethan sat alone in his office, sunlight streaming in through the window, casting sharp lines across his desk. He gazed out over the Chicago skyline, the buildings towering and pristine, a testament to the ambition that had driven him for so long. Yet, looking at it now, he felt a strange detachment, a growing awareness that this life, his polished office, his high-ranking position, felt like someone else's achievement. He thought back to the times Chloe had described her dreams of a small cafe, a place that fostered warmth and connection. Her vision held a simplicity that resonated with him, a reminder of the life he once thought he'd build before he became consumed by corporate success. Chloe's resilience and quiet strength had stirred something within him, an urge to strip away the pretenses and find the kind of meaning he'd longed for without fully realizing it. That afternoon, after submitting a project proposal, he opened his email to find a message from his old boss, someone he admired and respected, offering him a promotion that would bring a higher salary and more prestige. It was the kind of opportunity that would have thrilled him just a year ago. But now, reading the words, he felt an unmistakable hollowness, a sense that this wasn't the path he wanted to pursue anymore. Ethan closed his eyes, letting out a slow breath. The decision he'd been avoiding was no longer ignorable. He needed to choose between the life he'd built and the life he now realized he wanted. Chloe's evenings at the cafe had become a steady rhythm in her life, a small but meaningful step toward independence. With each shift, her dream of owning her own cafe became clearer in her mind. She imagined the warm, welcoming space she would create, a place where people could linger and connect, where she could make her own small impact in the lives of others. One afternoon, Margie pulled her aside after a shift, her expression thoughtful. "Chloe, I see the way you light up when you talk about your plans for a cafe. I want you to know, if there's anything I can do to help you get started, just say the word." Chloe's eyes widened, a mix of gratitude and disbelief filling her chest. "Thank you, Margie. I don't know if I could do this without you." Margie smiled, a warm, motherly expression. It's not about doing it alone. It's about believing in yourself, trusting that you have what it takes. That evening, Chloe returned to her apartment, her heart racing with possibility. She'd begun saving little by little, and Margie's words had ignited something within her. It was as if, for the first time, her dreams weren't just wishful thinking. They were something tangible, something within reach. She sat down with her notebook, mapping out her plans, jotting down ideas and costs, her fingers moving faster with each new thought. But with the excitement came a sliver of doubt. The journey would be difficult, and the risk of failure lingered in the back of her mind. She thought of Ethan, of the encouragement he'd given her, the unwavering belief that she could succeed. His friendship had been an anchor in her life, a source of strength and comfort. And though they were each following their own paths, she knew that his support had been instrumental in helping her find her own courage. Later that week, Chloe and Ethan met at their favorite bench by the lake, a spot that had become a quiet refuge in the chaos of the city. The crisp autumn air surrounded them, the trees casting long shadows across the path as they settled into an easy conversation. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Ethan began, his voice reflective, "about what I want, about where my life is going. And I don't think I can keep going down the same path anymore." Chloe looked at him, her eyes warm with understanding. "Ethan, it takes courage to admit that. Sometimes letting go of what we know is the hardest part." He nodded, a small smile breaking through his seriousness. "Meeting you changed things for me, Chloe. You reminded me that there's more to life than success and ambition. You've helped me see that I need to be honest with myself, to stop living a life that isn't truly mine." They sat in a comfortable silence, the weight of his words settling between them. For Chloe, hearing Ethan speak with such openness was a reminder of the strength they'd found together, the way their friendship had allowed each of them to see beyond their fears. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, turning to look at her. "You've been there for me in ways I can't even begin to explain." Chloe reached out, resting her hand gently on his. "And you've been there for me too, Ethan. I wouldn't be here, pursuing my dreams, if it weren't for your support." They shared a quiet moment, a sense of mutual gratitude filling the space between them. Their friendship had become a source of strength, a bond that had given them both the courage to face their own paths, even if it meant parting ways. That evening, Ethan returned to his apartment, feeling a sense of clarity he hadn't known in months. He knew what he needed to do, even if it meant letting go of the life he'd built with Lily. Their relationship, once a cornerstone of his future, had become a reminder of the person he no longer wanted to be, a person focused on appearances and status rather than authenticity and purpose. He found Lily in the living room, reading on the couch, her gaze lifting as he entered. There was a softness in her eyes, a quiet recognition that mirrored his own. They both sensed the unspoken truth that their paths were diverging, that the future they'd once envisioned together no longer held the same meaning. "Lily," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I think we both know things aren't the same anymore." She looked at him, her expression sad but understanding. "I felt it too, Ethan. I think we've been holding on to a dream that doesn't fit us anymore." He nodded, relief and sadness mingling in his chest. "I'm grateful for everything we've shared, Lily. You've been an incredible part of my life." They embraced, a quiet farewell filled with respect and acceptance. And as Ethan walked away, he felt a strange sense of peace, knowing he'd made the right choice, that he was finally free to pursue a life that felt true to himself. The support from Margie, Ethan's encouragement, and her own savings had given Chloe the foundation she needed to pursue her dream of opening her cafe. She found a small space on the edge of the neighborhood, a place with potential but in need of love and care to make it her own. The cost was daunting, but Chloe was determined, her vision clear and unwavering. With her plan finalized, Chloe made her way to the cafe for her last shift. The familiar smell of coffee, the comforting hum of customers, and the warmth of Margie's smile filled her with both excitement and nostalgia. She thanked Margie, expressing her gratitude for the opportunity, for the kindness that had helped her rebuild her life. "You're going to do amazing things, Chloe," Margie said, pulling her into a warm hug. I have no doubt you'll make that space everything you've dreamed of. As Chloe walked out of the cafe, her heart filled with hope, she felt a quiet certainty in her decision. The future was uncertain, but she knew she was taking the first step toward a life that was truly hers. That weekend, Chloe invited Ethan to visit her new space, a modest but charming storefront with large windows and an open layout, perfect for the cozy, welcoming atmosphere she envisioned. She could see it now, filled with comfortable seating, warm lighting, and a corner lined with books and artwork from local artists. Ethan arrived, his expression one of genuine admiration as he looked around the space. Chloe, this is incredible. I can already picture it. Your vision, your heart. It's all here. Chloe smiled, a quiet pride shining in her eyes. It's just a start, but it feels right. Like I'm finally creating something that's mine. They stood in the middle of the room, taking in the possibilities, their friendship filling the space with a sense of shared joy and accomplishment. For both of them, this moment represented the journey they'd taken together, the courage to pursue their dreams, the strength to let go of what no longer served them. Thank you for everything, Ethan, Chloe said softly, her voice filled with emotion. I don't think I'd be here without you. He took her hand, his expression sincere. And I wouldn't be where I am without you, Chloe. You've shown me what it means to live with purpose. They shared a quiet, meaningful embrace, a final acknowledgement of the impact they'd had on each other's lives. Though their futures were leading them in different directions, they knew their bond would remain, a foundation they could always return to. In the days that followed, Chloe poured herself into transforming her new cafe space. She spent hours painting, decorating, and organizing, her heart invested in every detail. The walls, once bare, were now lined with artwork and shelves of books, the tables arranged to create a warm, inviting environment. It was everything she'd dreamed of, a place that felt like home. Ethan, meanwhile, began volunteering full-time at a community center, finding fulfillment in helping others, building connections, and contributing to something meaningful. The career he'd once pursued felt like a distant memory, replaced by a life that resonated with the values he'd discovered through his friendship with Chloe. Though they saw each other less often, they stayed in touch, meeting occasionally for coffee, sharing updates, and cheering each other on from afar. Their friendship, though transformed, remained a lasting bond, a reminder of the strength they'd found together, the courage to pursue lives rooted in authenticity. Ethan felt a mix of excitement and nerves as he walked into the community center on his first official day as a volunteer. It was a modest building, tucked between two apartment complexes, its walls lined with posters announcing local events, after-school programs, and support groups. The energy of the place was different from anything he'd known in his corporate life. There was a sense of purpose here, a shared commitment to helping people that felt genuine and grounding. He was introduced to the staff and volunteers, a diverse group of people from all walks of life, each driven by the desire to make a difference. His supervisor, a warm, middle-aged man named James, greeted him with a firm handshake and a friendly smile. "We're glad to have you, Ethan," James said. "There's a lot of work to be done, and having someone with your background will be a big help." Ethan spent the morning shadowing James, observing the programs in action, the children's reading sessions, the job training courses, the support meetings for parents and caregivers. The center bustled with activity, the rooms filled with laughter, conversation, and the occasional noise of kids racing through the halls. As he helped organize a supplies closet in the afternoon, Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction in the work. It was simple, hands-on, and real, a stark contrast to the abstract reports and polished presentations of his former job. Here, he felt needed in a way he hadn't felt in years, his contribution tangible and meaningful. During his break, he checked his phone and found a message from Chloe. "Thinking of you on your first day. Hope it's everything you'd hoped for. I'm proud of you." A smile spread across his face as he typed back, "Thanks, Chloe. It's different, but in the best way. Can't wait to tell you about it." Her words stayed with him as he continued his work, a reminder of the journey they'd taken together, the encouragement they'd given each other to follow paths that felt real. Chloe's cafe, named the Open Heart, was set to open in just a week, and the days leading up to it were filled with a flurry of activity. She spent every waking hour at the cafe, transforming the space with the help of Margie and a few friends. The walls, once plain and empty, were now adorned with local artwork and shelves stacked with books. She'd chosen a warm, earthy color palette, the lights dimmed to create a cozy, welcoming atmosphere. As she worked, Chloe thought back to the long nights of planning, the encouragement from Ethan, and the quiet belief that had carried her through each challenge. The Open Heart wasn't just a cafe. It was the manifestation of everything she'd fought for, a place that represented resilience, community, and connection. On the night before opening day, she walked through the cafe one last time, making small adjustments, placing a few vases of wildflowers on each table. She stood in the middle of the room, her heart full, and took a deep breath. It was a moment of pride, a realization that she'd created something meaningful, something that would give back to others the way she had once needed. Ethan stopped by that evening, bringing a bouquet of flowers and a warm smile. "Chloe, this place is incredible. It's everything you described, and more." She accepted the flowers, her gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Ethan. I couldn't have done this without you." They shared a quiet, emotional hug, a moment of mutual understanding passing between them. They'd come so far together, their journeys intertwined yet separate, each finding strength in the other's support. A few weeks later, Ethan's life at the community center had settled into a fulfilling routine. He'd taken on several responsibilities, helping to organize after-school programs, coordinating volunteers, and even leading a weekly mentoring session for young adults. The work was challenging but deeply rewarding, a testament to the impact he could make in a role that felt purposeful. One afternoon, James approached him with an idea. "Ethan, I've noticed the way the kids here look up to you. We're thinking of launching a mentorship program, something more structured. You'd be the perfect person to lead it." Ethan considered the offer, feeling a sense of pride and excitement. The thought of creating something that could make a real difference in the lives of young people was exactly the kind of fulfillment he'd been searching for. Later that evening, he messaged Chloe. "Got some news. The center wants me to lead a new mentorship program. It feels like a big step, but I think it's the right one." Her reply was immediate. "That's amazing, Ethan. You're going to be incredible. Those kids are lucky to have you." Her words filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. Chloe had been there for every step of his journey, cheering him on, reminding him of his own capacity for change. Their bond had given him the courage to make these choices, and he felt a deep gratitude for her unwavering support. One evening, as Chloe was closing up the cafe, Ethan stopped by, a warm smile on his face. He'd become a regular at the Open Heart, often dropping by after his work at the community center to chat with Chloe, share stories, and catch up on each other's lives. They sat together at one of the tables, the cafe quiet now, the warmth of the dim lighting casting a cozy glow around them. "How's everything going at the center?" Chloe asked, her voice soft, genuine. Ethan leaned back, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "It's more than I could have hoped for. I feel like I'm finally doing something that matters. And I owe a lot of that to you." Chloe's eyes softened, a small smile playing on her lips. "Ethan, you've always had that in you. I just gave you a little nudge." They shared a comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. For Chloe, this moment was a reminder of how far they'd both come, how their lives had intertwined in ways that had changed them for the better. And for Ethan, sitting here with Chloe in the space she'd created, he felt a deep peace, a sense that his life, once so carefully planned, was now guided by something far more genuine. "You know," Ethan said, his voice filled with emotion, "I don't think I would have had the courage to make these changes without you. Meeting you, it's been one of the best things to happen to me." Chloe felt her throat tighten, a surge of gratitude filling her chest. "And I feel the same way, Ethan. You've shown me that I'm capable of more than I ever thought." They shared a quiet, lingering look, a shared gratitude filling the space between them. Though their paths had taken them in different directions, their friendship remained a powerful force in each of their lives, a bond rooted in mutual respect, kindness, and a deep, unspoken understanding. The day of the mentorship program's launch was marked by a small celebration at the community center. Ethan's team, along with the students and their families, gathered to mark the beginning of what they hoped would be a transformative journey for everyone involved. Ethan felt a mix of pride and humility as he addressed the group, sharing his hopes for the program and expressing his gratitude for the opportunity to make a difference. Chloe attended the celebration, standing toward the back of the room, her gaze fixed on Ethan as he spoke. She felt a deep pride in his accomplishments, a joy that came from seeing someone she cared about truly thrive. Their journey had been filled with challenges, doubts, and difficult choices, but it had brought them both to places they were meant to be. After the event, Ethan found her by the refreshment table, a bright smile on his face. "Thank you for being here, Chloe. It means more than you know." She returned his smile, her voice filled with warmth. "I wouldn't miss it for the world. You're doing something incredible here, Ethan." They shared a quiet hug, a farewell for now, each knowing that their friendship would continue, even as their lives took them on separate paths. In the months that followed, Chloe's cafe flourished, becoming a beloved spot in the community. She hosted open mic nights, invited local artists to showcase their work, and started a book club that drew people together over shared stories and discussions. The Open Heart had become more than just a business. It was a place of connection, a reflection of Chloe's vision and resilience. Ethan's mentorship program also thrived, giving him a deep sense of fulfillment. He watched as the young people he worked with grew more confident, more hopeful about their own futures. The community center had become a second home, a place where he felt he belonged, where he could make a real impact. Though they saw each other less frequently, Ethan and Chloe continued to keep in touch, meeting when they could, cheering each other on from afar. Their friendship had become a foundation of support, a reminder of the journey they'd taken together, the courage they'd found in each other. They had each found their own version of happiness, rooted in lives they created with intention and authenticity. And though their paths were different, they knew their bond would always be a part of who they were, a friendship that had changed them, a love that transcended expectations and spoke to the quiet beauty of finding purpose. 1 year after the Open Heart had opened its doors, Chloe decided to celebrate the cafe's first anniversary with a gathering for her regulars, friends, and members of the community who had supported her dream. The cafe was packed that evening, every table filled with familiar faces, laughter, and warm conversation. The space had transformed into everything Chloe had envisioned, a haven where people came not only for coffee but for connection, a sense of belonging that she had longed to create. Chloe took a moment to stand back and absorb the sight, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She had come a long way, from struggling to find her footing to building a place that brought others joy. Her journey had been marked by countless challenges, yet here she was, surrounded by the people who had become a family to her. As she looked around, she spotted Ethan entering the cafe, a bright smile on his face as he navigated the crowded room. He held a bouquet of wildflowers, their bright colors a cheerful contrast to the warm, earthy tones of the cafe. "Congratulations, Chloe," he said, handing her the flowers. "This place is everything you dreamed of. I'm so proud of you." She accepted the flowers, her smile filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Ethan. I couldn't have done this without you." They found a quiet spot in the corner, a familiar warmth settling between them as they caught up on each other's lives. Ethan told her about the mentorship program at the community center, the young people he'd been working with, and the joy he felt in his role. Chloe shared the highlights of her year, the small victories, and the moments of connection that made each day worthwhile. As they sat together, each felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction in the lives they'd built. Their friendship, once a guiding light in a time of uncertainty, had become a steady, enduring presence, a reminder of the courage they'd found in each other and the strength they'd discovered within themselves. Ethan's work at the community center had become his true calling, a purpose that gave him a sense of fulfillment he'd never known in his corporate career. Over the months, he expanded the mentorship program, securing grants that allowed them to offer scholarships, job training, and additional resources for the young people who relied on the center. One afternoon, as he wrapped up a meeting, a young man named Jordan approached him. Jordan had been part of the mentorship program from the beginning, a bright, determined kid with dreams of going to college. "Mr. Ethan," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I just wanted to thank you. The program, it's changed my life. I wouldn't have made it this far without your support." Ethan felt a surge of pride, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Jordan, you did this. You believed in yourself, and you made it happen. I'm just grateful to be part of your journey." Moments like these reminded Ethan of why he'd chosen this path, why he'd left behind the life he once thought he wanted. His decision, shaped by Chloe's friendship and his own desire for purpose, had brought him to a place where his work had meaning, where he could make a real difference. As the open heart continued to flourish, Chloe began to dream of expanding, of bringing her vision to other neighborhoods where people craved the same sense of warmth and connection. She found a second location, a cozy spot across town, and began the process of transforming it into another welcoming space. The expansion was challenging, filled with late nights and countless decisions, but Chloe faced each hurdle with a renewed strength. Her confidence had grown, her sense of purpose deepened by the work she loved. And through it all, she thought of Ethan, of the friendship that had been her anchor during the hardest times. She often shared her updates with him, his words of encouragement fueling her determination. One evening, as she stood in the nearly finished second cafe, Chloe felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she'd known. She had built something lasting, something meaningful, a legacy that reflected her journey, her resilience, and the kindness she'd received along the way. Though their busy lives often kept them apart, Chloe and Ethan continued to meet when they could, sharing updates and stories, supporting each other from a distance. Their friendship, though changed by the paths they'd taken, remained a source of strength and joy for them both. One evening, as they met for coffee at the Open Heart, Ethan looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "Chloe, do you ever think about how far we've come? Where we started, and where we are now?" She nodded, a smile touching her lips. "All the time. Sometimes it feels like a dream." They shared a quiet, reflective moment, a mutual understanding passing between them. They'd both chosen paths that felt true, paths that had brought them peace and fulfillment. And though their lives were separate, their bond had remained, a reminder of the journey they'd shared and the growth they'd inspired in each other. "You've taught me so much, Ethan," Chloe said softly. "I wouldn't be who I am today without you." He took her hand, his voice filled with gratitude. "And I feel the same. Thank you, Chloe, for everything." They sat in silence, each reflecting on the ways their friendship had shaped their lives, the ways they'd found strength in each other's support. They had become a testament to the power of human connection, to the quiet courage it took to pursue lives rooted in authenticity and purpose. As the years went by, Chloe's cafe expanded further, becoming a beloved institution in several neighborhoods, a place where people felt seen, welcomed, and valued. She continued to pour her heart into her work, her passion driving her each day. The success of the Open Heart was not just a personal achievement, but a reflection of the values she held dear: kindness, community, and the importance of creating spaces where people felt they belonged. Ethan's mentorship program had also grown, impacting countless lives and giving young people the support they needed to pursue their dreams. He'd become a fixture at the community center, his life dedicated to service, his heart full from the connections he'd built. Though they had both found fulfillment in their own ways, Chloe and Ethan never lost touch, their friendship evolving into a quiet, steadfast presence that brought them both comfort and joy. They celebrated each other's milestones, shared in each other's joys, and remained a constant source of encouragement and respect. They each knew that their journey, once intertwined, had brought them to a place of peace, a life well lived, guided by love, kindness, and the courage to be true to themselves. Years later, Chloe and Ethan met at the Open Heart, sharing coffee and memories in the cafe that had been the beginning of Chloe's dream. They spoke of the lives they'd touched, the people they'd helped, and the sense of fulfillment they'd found. Their bond had grown stronger with time, a friendship rooted in the shared experiences that had defined them. As they said their goodbyes, both knew that they would always carry a piece of each other, a legacy of kindness, courage, and love that had shaped their lives in ways they hadn't anticipated. They had each found their own paths that had been guided by the friendship that had changed them, a reminder that true connection transcends time and distance. And as they walked away, each toward their own future, they felt a profound sense of gratitude, knowing that they had been a part of something rare, a friendship that had brought them both home to themselves. If you enjoyed this journey with Chloe and Ethan and want more stories filled with friendship, resilience, and heartfelt connections, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means a lot and helps keep these stories coming. Thank you for being a part of this story. Stay tuned for more.